Well, before we get in the program, Holly, it's time for this week's Joke of the Week.
Yeah, so the joke of the week is I read a novel about a guy who had a small garden. Not much of a plot.
Boom.
Boom, chicka, boom, chicka, boom, boom.
Yeah.
Dun, 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 dun.
This week's garden joke is brought to you by Rescue.com.
American-made rescue products keep your family, home, and yard protected from pest insects like wasps, hornets, yellow jackets, fire ants, and more. Learn more at rescue.com. That's rescue.com.
So, edible landscaping. We talk about growing things in our garden. However, edible landscaping is a unique way to grow and do other in a way in which is not, I guess, conventional or traditional or, there's a garden. So, that type of mindset.
Yep. So edible landscaping, it's the use of food plants or edible plants as design features in a landscape. So the plants are there for the aesthetic value as well as consumption. So it's using things to grow to look pretty, but also to eat. So there's definitely some pros to it. It's an easy way to connect with the food you eat without committing to a whole vegetable garden. So you could tuck some kale into a flower bed. So and we'll go over more ideas, but it's basically, I think, like it would be a low commitment way to grow some edibles, and then you're able to kind of see how that goes.
Well, hiding a vegetable in with an ornamental, and this is predominantly or more traditionally done.
Not hiding.
Well,
just like tucking it in.
If you're in like an HOA.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah, that type of thing. You can certainly hide in that
But it's also just a matter of maybe you don't want to have a whole vegetable garden.
Right, true.
Yeah.
You want to intermingle too. You want to use your side bed.
Right.
And don't want to commit to a yard or can't. And you only have a certain option. People live in condos. They don't necessarily own the property. They own the facility in which they live, but some may have access to a small bed in which is very close or next to their residence. So in that manner, you can grow flowers and vegetables intermingled, even in a manner of no edibles here. You can work those in.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can definitely do that, or you can just, maybe you're just like, hey, I want to grow vegetables, but I don't want to, but I only want to put them here. I don't have to hide anything, but I'm just going to have a little bit of colorful Swiss chard amongst my roses or something.
Uh-huh.
I'm not an edible landscape expert, but yeah.
There's rainbow Swiss chard, which means that there is red, green, yellow, and white stalked orange.
Yeah.
And then there's plain white stalked.
Right.
Which to someone who is not familiar to what Swiss chard is, one would very easily identify that as an ornamental.
Yeah, it's very pretty. So I think it would look nice maybe if you have some nice flowers planted. It doesn't get, you would want to kind of put it behind the flowers as like a little backdrop. You could put it in the front of the flowers, but it might eventually kind of cover them. But that would be a good one. And then another reason is that you want to try this, or one pro, is that it does decrease the food miles. It reduces reliance on fossil fuel support, etc. And it also provides you with some horticultural therapy. So maybe you're like, I always grow the same old flowers every year. I'm going to try this, and this will give you something else to grow. And that sometimes will, even if you're maybe getting sick of gardening or something, it gives you a chance to grow something new and different. Give it a try, see how it works. And that's always good.
Well, explain the food miles, because we are not, what does that mean, first of all?
Sure. So for the average American, it's about 1,500 miles from farm to table to get your food. So when you are growing your own vegetables or utilizing a farmer's market, etc., buying local, you cut down those miles quite drastically, especially if you're growing your own. It's right outside your door, essentially.
Now, we're not against using fossil fuels for important and everyday things, but whatever little bit we can utilize in order to detract from the excess or above use of it, we would encourage that.
Absolutely. And Edible landscaping does promote, sustainable gardening practices. It maximizes water efficiency, supports wildlife, it reduces the use of chemicals in the landscape. So if you're growing it yourself, you're probably not spraying it with a bunch of stuff.
Not to the level of what a commercial institute would.
Absolutely. And so that's something to definitely keep in mind, is that no matter if you're growing an edible landscape or if you're growing your own backyard vegetables, a whole garden, you are still there's an environmental positive component, whether you want to acknowledge that or not, whether you think it's good or bad for the environment. It's still there. You're still cutting down on the usage of certain resources. And you're encouraging wildlife, let's say butterflies, bees, hummingbirds, praying mantises, fill in the blank, to come into a environment or a world in which they would not be if the garden did not exist, or whatever type of landscape that you are creating. Right. That's correct too. So again, we talked about the leafy greens. I know Swiss chard. We talked about kale, and many people don't realize that there's ornamental kale that a lot of people will grow that they could eat, but then there's typically grown edible kale or vegetable garden kale, whatever. Russian red kale, curly kale. There's a dinosaur kale. Yeah, dinosaur kale is not the Latin term. That is what we refer to as, because Latin is not our second language. Right, and these could be a great addition to any garden. And then even just something like lettuce, a nice, pretty lettuce, or I think cabbage is really pretty when it grows. Well, you got burgundy cabbage or purple cabbage, and then you've got green cabbage. Green cabbage. And I mean, most people would be able to, if you're trying to hide it, that's not the one to go with, because a lot of people go, oh, that's clearly a vegetable. I don't know what that is, but that's a vegetable. Yeah, but it still looks cool. Leeks you could hide if you're wanting to hide. And leeks, they're supposedly in the book, when you read the book, 16 leeks per square foot. I'm almost certain that's what it said. I may be misquoting that. But we found about 6 is really the adequate number of leeks that will work in a square foot garden. Yes. So that's another thing, is root crops. So you could do onions, leeks, shallots. 9 per square foot is what is recommended. I would only go about 6, because we grow leeks about bigger than broom handles. Right. And that they take up a lot of room. Go ahead. So you could do leeks, as Joey had mentioned, onions, even potatoes you could do. That might not work because it is a dig up. Root crop. So you might not be able to put it amongst your flowers, because you might end up digging up your flowers. But if you get creative, maybe. And then also, what I say, onions, leeks, you could do, I think you could do carrots. I don't think carrots would be as obvious. No, carrots would be fine if you're trying to hide. Beet greens look pretty, so that would work. What else? Oh, the list can go on and on and on. Lettuces. There's a lot of different colored lettuces, ground cover herbs, oregano, thyme. Don't do mint, because if you put mint in the ground, you might as well move, because you're never going to get out of the ground unless you use chemicals in order to eradicate it, because it's just like, it's related to Creepin' Charlie, and it roots underneath. It can get really aggressive. It will get aggressive. You need to call the law, because it's so aggressive. In your backyard. And we're not going to touch on this much, but fruit and nut trees are an option. There's dwarf varieties. There's a lot of different varieties. It's not necessarily edible landscaping, but it's an option. There are certain, and I've heard these stories from several people, there are certain HOAs that you cannot have a fruit tree. At least I believe it's in the front yard. However, you can have a non-bearing cherry tree in the front yard, which we have, which means it will blossom, put pretty flowers on, but no fruit, because they don't want any of that mess on the ground or on the sidewalk or anything. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. So with that, Holly, what does make sense is waltonsinc.com. Yeah, we know you care about where your food comes from. Canning and preserving your fruits, vegetables, and more is great, but what about the meat? waltonsinc.com has everything you need to make any type of meat product. You can find specials and sales online. Meatgistics.com is there to help educate on the hows and whys of meat processing, as well as a community of 15,000 users who will help give you their opinion on guidance on meat processing issues. They have decades of experience. Walton's has a full line of stuffers, mixers, and now meat grinders. And you can go to waltonsinc.com. They have everything you need from animal to edible. Use code GROW50 to save 10% off your orders of $50 or more.